Welcome to part 2 of our two-part video series on Cantata integration with the Jenkins continuous integration development and build automation environment. I am Rob Mueller, Technical Support Engineer with QA Systems, the software quality company. Today we will create a Jenkins pipeline project that encompasses the following elements. First, we pull the software under test from the repository. Then we generate the Cantata static instrumentation file. From that, we generate the auto test with code coverage for our SUT. Both of these are command line steps, so you don't need to have them as a pipeline stage if you're simply integrating a ready-to-use Cantata workspace project. The SUT, which we downloaded from the repository, we will then move to our local test sandbox, launch our Cantata Team Reporting server, execute our unit tests, code coverage, and push the results to the Team Reporting server. Ensure that our test results are printed onto the console so they can be readily viewed in a log script as part of the pipeline project. And lastly, we will then clean up our software under test project, remove any executables, binaries, object files, and upload the results along with the project back into the repository. The pipeline project will be implemented using a Jenkins Groovy script and making liberal use of Bash. In doing so, we will address two approaches: integrating an existing Cantata workspace by taking advantage of the Cantata plugin, and relying on the Cantata command line usage model to generate an auto test script with code coverage and having it built and executed via a make environment. We're looking at both of these approaches in parallel. As an example for repository, we will be using the ever popular GitHub. Here you can see our test case sandbox on the GitHub repository that we're using for this example. In the first stage of the pipeline script, we download the Cantata test case from this repository using the git clone command. So let us go back to our Cantata pipeline project. Here you can see that we set up a pipeline script with the different stages using the built-in Groovy sandbox for Jenkins. Let us go over the pipeline script in a little bit more detail. As mentioned before, first we check out the Cantata test case from GitHub. The second and third stage prepare the Cantata test case by generating a Cantata static instrumentation file and a Cantata test script from the command line. You can find out more details by looking at our technote at www.qasystems.com/resource and check out the technote on command line usage. As you can see, to generate the Cantata static instrumentation file, you will call the ipg_comp command line utility, feeding in the ipg.comp configuration file and passing on the general build options for your software under test. To generate the auto test, you simply call the startup binary for the Cantata software and handing over to the autotest generator the autotest options as well as your coverage rule set. These two stages can be skipped if you already defined and created a test case using Cantata's graphical user interface. Then we can move to running the tests and collecting test results in our test sandbox. As in our example, we want to enable Cantata Team Reporting. It is first necessary to launch the Cantata server, assuming it has previously been configured. On the command prompt, this can simply be done by launching the server and waiting an appropriate time span. So in our case, we're using a start server shell script and using the sleep command to wait for an appropriate period of time. Once the server is launched, you will see the following console output. Once the server is up and running, we can launch a test run from within Jenkins and push the results back to Jenkins as well as the Cantata Team Reporting server. This can be done either by simply building and running the test from the Cantata Makefile environment from within the test case directory, as we are doing right here. In addition to running the tests and creating the detailed build log, this also writes the output into the console, visible from within Jenkins, and pushes the result records to the Cantata Team Reporting server. Alternatively, we can, however, also simply take advantage of an already existing GUI-generated test case and run it with help of the Cantata Jenkins plugin directly from the Cantata Pipeline's Groovy script. This can be seen in the commented out section here. Finally, we will add the CTR file contents to the Jenkins recorded console output and ensure the generation of an HTML format test summary report. If this is already set as part of a GUI-generated test case, that extra step may not be needed. To do this, however, from the command line, you call the Cantata starter application and hand the report over, the test results over, to the test report generator in the Cantata Java application. In the very last step, we can then clean the project of binaries and build results and commit the test case and the test results back to the Git repository. Finally, let us now execute the Jenkins pipeline and have a closer look at the test flow visibility and results tracking within Jenkins and within Team Reporting. What we just did was a fully managed test run, complete with repository maintenance that was for all intents and purposes identical to running the same kind of test from within Cantata. So in other words, it was identical to running this specific test case that we already saw in the first video with the settings for Team Reporting enabled. Thus it was identical to selecting run tests from within the workspace like so. Regardless of whether we do it from a IDE-driven environment like here, or using the command line options I described in more detail in the Groovy script. First, looking at the Cantata Team Reporting results, let us zoom in on a specific test run just now. We can also look at the test run summary report. And we can get the latest build status of our test case. From a Jenkins pipeline perspective, we can see the following. Let us first look at the timeline trend. We can also look at the full build stage view, which zooms into the test runs and how long each of the stages in this test run took. You can even look at the log details for each and every step of the build. If we now look at the last build and the workspace view associated with it, we can have access to the full test case and build environment. Let us also look at the pipeline steps and the detailed flow graph. We'll get status on each of the steps, get a description of the stage commands, and have access to the console output for each of these steps. And now let's go back and have a look at the detailed console output for the entire run. Again, I've been selecting verbose output so we get more detail than you may want in your real-world example. Here we can see the detailed build report on the Cantata static instrumentation build, on the auto test generation, on the test run itself. We get the test results output, and then we get the repository recommit and modification information. All this ends up in a successful test run. In summary, we have seen how a Cantata test can be organically integrated into a continuous build integration and validation improvement development flow using Jenkins. In doing so, we visited the concepts of using a repository for test case maintenance, using Cantata Team Reporting from within Jenkins, integrating Cantata with Jenkins regardless of whether we are following a Cantata IDE user interface approach or a strictly command line driven testing approach. Use of the Cantata Jenkins plugin for both freestyle and pipeline projects. We hope the 2 videos in this mini-series on Cantata Jenkins integration prove useful to you in integrating Cantata with your own development and test flow. Thank you so much for your attention and for joining us today. Goodbye.